You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, we have a new mayor in Toronto, Olivia Chow. And, of course, the fun part of this election, of course, is the fact that, number one, there were 102 people on the ballot. Number two, that a dog got more votes than most of the other real people. And number three, that Doug Ford is now Olivia Chow's biggest fan after saying this before the election actually happened.
But, folks, I'll tell you, if a left-wing mayor gets in there, we're toast. I'll tell you, it'd be a disaster, in my opinion.
A disaster in his opinion, Jim, but that was the day before. Then after last night, he's singing a different tune.
During the election, you throw some mud back and forth, but I'll tell you one thing, people expect us to work together, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll work together.
Yeah.
Good luck with
we're going to find common ground.
Yeah, that's what they'll find. So, Jim, what's your take on all this?
Well, here's the part where you laugh your head off, right? Because a week earlier, he was more specific. He said, if Olivia Chow it'll be an unmitigated disaster for Toronto. It will be, you'll see businesses fleeing the city. Taxes are going to go up. That's pretty strong stuff coming from a premier, a provincial premier, who might have, had thought to himself, maybe I'm going to have to work with this person. Maybe he thinks she didn't have a chance. He was backing Mark Saunders, who was the former police chief. And Mark Saunders didn't even come close. Chow got nearly 270,000 votes. Saunders got 63, which gives you some indication of how tuned in Doug is. But here's the other thing, because people can say, well, yeah, but he's still the premier, right? Whether it's Quebec or Ontario, municipalities are creatures of the provinces, and, she's going to have to do what he said. Except that same Doug Ford a couple of years ago, thinking perhaps that Olivia Chow or an Olivia Chow type would never be elected mayor of Toronto, basically gave the mayoralty of Toronto, additional powers. It's called strong mayor, I guess, as opposed to weak mayor. And strong mayor powers means you could pass a bylaw with only 1/3 support from city council. You could hire and fire department heads at the city on your whim. And this is basically goes back to a conversation he had with his late brother Rob, who was the mayor of Toronto at one point, who said, "I'm mayor and I only got one vote and that's all I have. That doesn't make any sense. What's up with that?" So Doug, when he became premier, says, "I'm going to give the mayor's role some punch." All this to tell us, though, I mean, we all know you should be careful about what you say. There's consequences to what you say. Mm-hmm. But I could not help but think of our own shoot from the hip Premier, Francois Legault, who has a nasty habit, although, to be fair, it's been less evident recently, but things haven't been sort of like jumping in the recent past. But he does tend to say things which tend to come back and bite him, not the least of which you'll recall when he sort of suggested that people in 2021, people should vote for everybody, shouldn't vote for all the parties, and he didn't mention the progressive conservatives, but that was clearly the endorsement he was giving. And the fact is that the Conservative Party of Canada actually lost a seat in Quebec after that election. So maybe he learned his lesson there. But man, oh man, in French they call it le droit de réserve. I would translate that to being the need to keep your mouth shut. Which is kind of scary when you figure that, Doug Ford runs the biggest, most prosperous, most powerful province in Confederation, and good old Francois Legault is coming in a close second. Will this be a lesson to legislators? We can but hope. But let's face it, Olivia Chow is not going to be losing any sleep anytime soon over what Doug Ford can or will do to her administration.
Okay, look, you have to wonder. Olivia Chow has been in politics off and on for a long time. She's she's a veteran, as they say. You kind of wonder if this is one of those meetings where you sit, you shake hands, they take the pictures with her and Doug Ford, and then she's going to do what she wants to do. I'm not sure Doug Ford has a whole lot of control here at all, does he, Jim?
Well, not really. In terms of the powers that she has, the powers that were given, these extraordinary powers that were given to her by Doug Ford.
Right.
However, she says, no, I will not use them, right? Because I'm a Democrat. I'm not going to use these extraordinary powers. We'll wait and see on that one. But listen, every time, and Doug Ford has, as far as I can see, as short a fuse as Francois Legault. Yeah. And here's Doug Ford. He's going to be sitting down. Do you not think every single scrum, at least for the next week or more, for Toronto, I mean, this is why you've got to pay attention. This is why you have to bring a certain amount of professionalism to your job, which is something that, quite frankly, neither Doug Ford and certainly Francois Legault have not done. They make it personal. It's supposed to be politics. I don't care if you're shaking hands and kissing babies. Just don't start, as he says, as we heard in that clip, Ford going, well, you throw a little mud. No, you don't. Not when your campaign. The campaign had nothing to do with you. And he still had to shoot his mouth off. Unbidden, by the way. He was being, the first time he opened his mouth about Olivia Chow, he was being interviewed about a completely different topic, and he suddenly had this epiphany, decided to mouth off. So once again, another lesson. If you want to maintain the confidence of the people who you're supposed to represent, if you want to maintain their respect, and I don't think that's a word that's completely obsolete these days, stop thinking with your mouth.
I was wondering if, I was joking earlier, if Olivia Chow is going to use these special powers perhaps to put a bike path right in front of Doug Ford's house, like just right across the driveway.
Or maybe through his house.
And maybe through the house. Thoroughfare.
Or, but this is it. But the fact that we're joking about this shouldn't be happening.
It shouldn't.
Whether we like it or not, Toronto is the economic engine, the number one city in Canada, and we have a situation which is maybe 3 script pages short of a sitcom pilot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're not even joking.
Wacky, the wacky mayor of a province, and the left of center mayor of the province's biggest city, clash wills every week here on CTV. But yeah, this is it. This is where we are.
Come and knock on my door.
Yeah, I would have seen Rob Ford as the better guy for this series. I'm just saying.
Well, he would have to have a role before,
Well, you would have had Chris Farley for that, unfortunately.
Intrude. That's true. Let's talk about this other story that you've highlighted here. There's a lot of talk about how much property Quebec politicians own. Our housing minister who bought a $770,000 home without a mortgage. Our prime minister who has, our premier, I don't like when he calls himself the prime minister. Our premier who has a penthouse that's worth, $3.2 million. Why is this an issue?
Okay, well, can I ask you? Okay, so we have a little bit of a different take here. You're kind of bothered by this, and I'm thinking, Jim.
Well, it just means
I'm
more.
I'm glad you're arguing over it.
Are you?
Yeah, because people should be arguing over this.
Good. Okay, thanks. So tell us your vantage point then.
Well, I think the reality is politicians pretend to be some Joe lunch bucket personality.
Totally.
But most of them, if you've got the time to go into politics, then maybe that's a fundamental problem.
Yeah.
Chances are you didn't spend a lot of time working for a living. A lot of lawyers, a lot of professionals who have got the money in the bank, who can afford to take the 4 years off, really, away from their careers, because no one, studies to be a politician, okay? But I found it interesting because this piece that was done by Quebecor, basically pointing out that, the average property holdings of a cabinet minister is about $1.6 million. And it kind of goes to show you, though, that to a certain extent, even the journalists who worked on that may be a bit disconnected, because the same way Quebec Solidaire learned during the last campaign that $1 million isn't that much, that we have a lot of people listening to us right now who, in terms of property and assets, who wouldn't consider themselves rich, are probably, nudging up close to $1 million, because it isn't as much as it used to be, as they say. But, what do you want here? They're out of touch with, the low-income renter because, I guess because they've never been a low-income renter.
There you go.
That's my
that's
issue.
Crazy.
It may be crazy, but my other side of this story, Jim, is this fact that if we keep doing this, and this seems to be something we're very happy to do all the time, call out these people because they happen to have a lot of money or they happen to have a lot of homes. Who's going to want to go into politics exactly?
Exactly. You're not going to get an argument from me here, okay? It's just like, are you supposed to be, submit to some sort of social, economic test? Should the Minister of Public Security have been a victim of crime in order for him or her
that's
to
not
take
the point,
crime
though.
seriously?
You can be filthy rich and still be in touch with your constituents. You can still have a sense of reality of what an apartment costs and what groceries cost.
Well, you
got people who are doing that for you. But let's be careful here, though, because on the one hand, which brings I kind of thought of this guy when I was reading the story. Our own minister responsible for you and me and every other Anglo, Eric Girard, that guy's sitting on a $4.3 million property, man. I mean, how I guess all the other Anglos are sitting in their $4 million properties. You know what I mean? It is not a bellwether of whether or not you understand. I think if Francois Legault seems out to lunch when it comes to housing, when it comes to, affordable housing. My God, let's say it out loud. When it comes to low-income housing, it's not because he's out of touch. It's because he doesn't care. Okay, he genuinely doesn't care. This guy, like it or not, he's been a millionaire most of his life. Last I heard, he's worth about $10 million. And the same thing with the housing minister, who's under Madame Duranceau, under investigation by the ethics commissioner, because basically she had her buddy, her flip operation buddy, lobbying her while she was a minister. Are they out to lunch? Yeah, they're out to lunch, but that's because basically they don't. I don't think being rich or having property is a disqualification from knowing what is going on. But you've got to listen to people. But like I say, for Monsieur Legault, even though I would suspect a fair amount of his support comes from that very economic demographic, he ain't too worried about what's going on. But I don't think he's disinterested because he's got a lot of money in the bank. I just think it's something he never needed to know.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's why you have staff. Your staff is there to support, to
Exactly.
let you know exactly what people are thinking. Hey, don't say this, don't do that. There are people out there struggling, and if you choose to ignore that, then it's your own fault. But we'll leave it at that. Jim, I thank you. I appreciate it.
Adamant.